Built to see the first light of the universe, the James Webb Telescope has now seen something else. Lights flickering deep inside 31/ATLAS, the third interstellar object ever to cross our system. Not cometary outgassing, not solar reflection, controlled illumination. The discovery threatens to rewrite not just astronomy, but our place in the cosmos. Astronomers had long searched the skies not only for planets or radio signals, but for anomalies that defy established models. In 31/ATLAS, Webb appears to have found exactly that, a phenomenon whose glow cannot be explained by natural processes, but instead suggests artificial origin. A luminous emission has been recorded that cannot be reconciled with the behavior of any known comet or asteroid, presenting an optical signature inconsistent with established principles of reflection or refraction. This finding has left the astronomical community with a pressing question. What is the true nature of 3-ATLAS? Initial detection placed 3-ATLAS as a faint object at the outer boundary of the solar system, moving along a trajectory inconsistent with any gravitationally bound body of local origin. Its interstellar provenance was evident. It must have formed beyond the sun's influence and entered our system after a long journey across the galaxy. At first, it was catalogued as an astronomical curiosity, similar to Oumuamua and Borisov, the two prior interstellar visitors. Yet from the earliest imaging data, anomalies were apparent. Unlike comparable objects, 3-ATLAS exhibited an atypical level of brightness. Photometric estimates of its luminosity failed to align with projections based on size or surface composition. More unusually, its light output remained stable, showing neither the expected decline nor the sporadic flares associated with volatile sublimation. The consistency of this brightness suggests a process not easily explained by known natural mechanisms. Unlike ordinary comets, which display episodic increases in brightness caused by sublimation of surface ices, 3-ATLAS maintained a constant luminosity, suggesting an energy source intrinsic to the object. This anomalous stability prompted coordinated observations from multiple ground-based observatories, while the James Webb Space Telescope, equipped with unprecedented infrared sensitivity, was tasked with conducting a detailed analysis. The subsequent findings were unexpected and transformative. Stationed nearly 1 million miles from Earth at the Sun-Earth Lagrange point, Webb was engineered to penetrate stellar glare and resolve faint phenomena obscured in visible wavelengths. When its instruments targeted 3-ATLAS, investigators anticipated clarification of earlier irregularities. Instead, the data further deepened the puzzle. Infrared measurements revealed a centralized thermal output that could not be explained by conventional solar reflection processes. While comets generally radiate by scattering sunlight off volatile rich dust and ice, 3-ATLAS exhibited a distinct thermal signature consistent with heat emanating outward from its interior. The observed radiation was not consistent with scattered sunlight, but with direct emission. Thermal imaging revealed a distribution that deviated from any known natural profile. The signal exhibited faint and irregular pulsations, yet with a periodicity that suggested a repeating cycle rather than stochastic variation. Such recurrence implied the presence of intentional structuring. Preliminary hypotheses advanced by teams at NASA and the European Space Agency included possibilities such as radioactive decay, internal frictional heating, or the presence of uncommon isotopic compositions. However, successive datasets failed to support these explanations. The remaining interpretation, though rarely articulated due to its implications, was that the object might possess an internal energy source, effectively, that it could be powered. As observational data from Webb, Hubble, and multiple ground-based facilities accumulated, a preliminary characterization of 3-ATLAS took shape, one markedly inconsistent with any catalogued celestial body. The object's orbital path displayed an unusual degree of precision, suggesting controlled adjustments rather than the stochastic perturbations expected of interstellar debris navigating gravitational wells. Its rotational behavior was equally anomalous, Although exhibiting a tumbling motion, the axis remained abnormally stable, inconsistent with conventional inertial drift models. Furthermore, the absence of a detectable coma or tail, even under conditions of significant solar irradiation, implied the presence of an external layer or structural casing that may function to shield the body from thermal stress. The subsequent and most debated result concerned the albedo measurements. In several regions, the surface reflectivity approached values near unity, consistent not with rock, ice, or dust, but with highly polished metallic surfaces. Such findings carried profound implications for the astrophysical community. An object that is metallic in composition, structured in form, and simultaneously exhibiting active energy emissions cannot be classified as a natural body under current scientific frameworks. Rather, it must be considered a candidate for artificial origin. In professional discussions, terminology began to shift. References to a probe, a beacon, or even an artifact appeared in internal correspondence. The hypothesis that 3 Atlas could represent an engineered construct, possibly an extraterrestrial spacecraft, was no longer confined to speculative forums, but circulated, cautiously, within secure institutional communications. Arguably, the most compelling evidence did not stem from thermal anomalies, orbital irregularities, or metallic surface characteristics, but from the object's photometric profile. Detailed spectral analysis revealed that the radiation emitted by 3 Atlas was confined to a narrow wavelength band. Such a signal cannot be explained as a diffuse reflection of solar photons from dust or ice. Rather, it exhibited the properties of a controlled emission. This spectral selectivity is consistent with technologies familiar to us on Earth, such as light-emitting diode arrays, laser-based communication systems, and beacon transmitters employed in spacecraft navigation. Further examination revealed that the emission band encompassed frequencies commonly utilized in terrestrial communication and navigational systems. Moreover, the intensity of the signal appeared to exhibit a subtle correlation with variations in solar radiation, suggesting the presence of an active regulatory mechanism operating in real time. The observed luminosity did not fluctuate randomly. Instead, it displayed intermittent patterned pulses. When the data were processed against established signal models, the outcome lacked definitive classification but could not be dismissed as noise. Interpretations within the community diverged. Certain researchers noted a resemblance between the pulses and binary encoding, while others proposed the possibility of a rotationally driven energy source. Regardless of the specific mechanism, the broader inference was unavoidable. 3 Atlas does not behave as a passive celestial object. Its activity indicates intentional operation, observed in real time as a directed process rather than a natural phenomenon. As observational datasets increased, a joint team of astrophysicists from MIT and Harvard conducted advanced signal analysis on the electromagnetic output of 3 Atlas. Initial inspection suggested randomness, with frequencies resembling broadband noise scattered across the spectrum. However, application of Fourier transform techniques to extract periodic components revealed an underlying structure. Embedded within the apparent static was a repeating pulse, far too precise to be attributed to natural phenomena. The signal did not conform to conventional binary schemes or known human modulation formats, yet its characteristics carried the distinct signature of deliberate encoding. Interpretations diverged within the scientific community. Some proposed that the signal functioned as a beacon, a repeating transmission designed for receivers beyond Earth. Others considered it telemetry, a continuous data stream directed back to the source of origin. The most disquieting aspect was its persistence. Since Webb's initial detection, the message had remained unchanged. This constancy suggested that 3 Atlas was not attempting to establish contact with humanity, but with another recipient, possibly one that had already received the signal. News of the findings circulated rapidly through senior levels of both scientific and defense institutions. An internal NASA report, later leaked anonymously, disclosed that high-ranking officials were already coordinating with international space agencies to evaluate potential risks. Some researchers interpreted the object as harmless, an ancient probe on a long, pre-programmed trajectory across interstellar space. Others expressed greater concern, asking unresolved questions. If a transmission exists, who is meant to receive it? If light emissions are confirmed, could propulsion also be involved? And if the object is operating by design, what is the rationale for its presence now? The classified report raised a scenario, considered unlikely but not dismissible, that 3 Atlas might not be a transient visitor but an active observer, systematically monitoring planetary alignments, electromagnetic interactions, or potentially even the activity of advanced civilizations. Such an implication created significant unease within institutional circles, for if this object were not solitary, its presence could indicate that another entity, possibly its originator, might follow. Subsequent photometric and spectral analyses of 3 Atlas's luminosity produced a striking hypothesis. The object was not merely radiating energy, but potentially harvesting it. Variations in brightness correlated with heliocentric distance, and the absence of expected volatile-driven chemical processes reinforced the interpretation that it could employ a solar energy collection array or an embedded photonic absorption system beneath its exterior shell. Lowe and colleagues advanced the hypothesis that the diffuse dust cloud enveloping 3 Atlas may fulfill dual operational roles, acting as camouflage to obscure the underlying artificial structure and functioning as a medium for enhanced absorption of solar radiation. If validated, this interpretation would indicate that 3 Atlas is a self-sustaining construct engineered for indefinite interstellar travel, capable of replenishing its energy reserves as it transits from one stellar system to the next. Such a framework is consistent with established theoretical models of interstellar probes, autonomous machines designed to remain dormant over extended timescales, reactivating only upon arrival in systems deemed suitable for study. Should our solar system have initiated this reactivation sequence, the implication is clear. The transmission has already been acknowledged. As international space agencies sought to formulate responses, a sobering consensus emerged. Humanity remains unprepared. Despite decades of theoretical discussion concerning possible extraterrestrial contact, our institutional frameworks, political, scientific, and philosophical, are not adequately structured to evaluate or respond to what 3 Atlas may signify. While no formal public declarations were issued, confidential documents reportedly originating from agencies in France, Japan, and Brazil pointed toward a shared assessment. The phenomenon could represent more than a statistical anomaly. It might constitute the earliest stage of an encounter unfolding gradually, in real time. Contrary to the scenarios popularized by cinematic portrayals, there has been no dramatic landing, no sudden appearance in the atmosphere, and no immediate revelation. What exists instead is data, photometric records, spectral readings, and persistent silence. The James Webb Space Telescope continues daily monitoring of the object, yet each analytical result appears to generate more uncertainties than resolutions. Should this represent an instance of contact, the nature of that interaction is defined externally, not by us, remote, quiet, and disquieting. This raises the most concerning possibility, that what we are observing is not a gesture of invitation, but a systematic act of surveillance, and that our presence may already have been registered. At the stage when predictive models indicated that 3 Atlas had stabilized into a consistent orbital trajectory, anomalous activity was recorded. A sudden and pronounced increase in luminosity occurred, with intensity rising by approximately 40% within a period of less than 2 minutes, before stabilizing at a new, elevated baseline. Unlike the gradual brightening typically associated with perihelion effects or sublimation processes, this flare was abrupt and was independently verified by both the James Webb Space Telescope and multiple terrestrial observatories. No evidence consistent with solar-wind interaction, impact phenomena, or structural fragmentation was detected. The event suggested the activation of an internal mechanism rather than any natural astrophysical process. The outburst was not limited to visible brightness. It also coincided with a distinct alteration in the object's heat profile, as though internal mechanisms had suddenly become active. Specialists advanced the unsettling idea that 3 Atlas had shifted into an awakened state, a change possibly initiated by its closeness to the Sun, or even by our own act of observing it. And if the event was intentional rather than natural, its purpose was unmistakable. It was meant to be detected. Not long after the sudden increase in brightness, revised orbital assessments from several agencies revealed a further irregularity. The path of 3 Atlas no longer matched earlier projections. Instead, it exhibited a minor but clearly detectable deviation. The deviation could not be explained by gravitational effects alone, nor by solar radiation pressure, which is often cited to explain small drifts in lighter bodies. The evidence pointed toward a controlled adjustment. What heightened concern was the direction of this new course. It led the object deeper into the solar system, altering its inclination so that it aligned more closely with Earth's orbital plane. Observations confirmed that 3 Atlas was no longer behaving like a body simply drifting through the solar system. Its path showed a precise deviation, resembling a calculated course change. While a number of scientists urged caution, suggesting a gravitational irregularity, others viewed the shift as controlled navigation, a maneuver beyond anything observed in comets or asteroids. If it possessed the ability to adjust its own motion, then it must be regarded as an active craft rather than inert debris. Once the object entered the field of Webb and Hubble's spectroscopic instruments, additional anomalies appeared. Analyses revealed surfaces reflecting like polished alloys, traces of rare Earth elements, and, most striking of all, spectral signatures pointing to compounds absent from the established periodic table. Such findings could not be explained by frozen rock or ordinary interstellar ice. They pointed to fabrication, or synthesis, under physical conditions never found in natural celestial environments. Spectral analysis revealed a pattern that did not correspond to any known chemical process, yet showed strong similarity to theoretical compounds proposed within quantum materials research. Substances predicted to form only under extreme magnetic fields or within quantum confinement. Such a result implied 2 possibilities. Either the object is extraordinarily ancient, predating human civilization by thousands of years, or it represents a recent fabrication by a civilization with technological capacity far beyond ours. The material composition itself carried more weight than any transmission, for even without interpreting a signal, the evidence showed the messenger was of unnatural origin. As the evidence increasingly indicated an artificial origin, governmental and institutional responses accelerated, though not in public view. Security protocols on astronomical data networks were tightened, research personnel were reassigned to classified projects, and an unexplained spike in satellite recalibration activities was documented across several regions. Major spacefaring states began closed-door contingency planning. A leaked memorandum from an international defense consortium even raised the possibility that 3 Atlas was not an isolated arrival, but a reconnaissance unit. Its distinctive morphology, sustained rotational stability, and apparent capacity to operate over interstellar distances were consistent with the architecture of long-duration observational probes. If its role was reconnaissance, the unanswered questions grew more pressing. What was its intended target, and what sequence of events might follow? Within academic institutions, observatories, and defense agencies, a troubling consensus began to crystallize. The implication that humanity was not alone, and that what was unfolding did not resemble dialogue, but systematic evaluation. As debate intensified, a research team at the SETI Institute undertook an experiment that other institutions declined to attempt. They directed a concentrated radio transmission toward the predicted coordinates of 3 Atlas. The encoded signal included universal mathematical constants, the periodic table of elements, and simple graphical representations of human form, intended as a cautious introduction on a cosmic scale. Several days passed, extending into a week, with no apparent reply. The effort was close to being catalogued as yet another unanswered transmission into interstellar space when an observatory in Chile reported an anomaly, an unexpected signal pattern that defied initial explanation. Analysis confirmed the detection of a narrowband return pulse, slightly offset in frequency, distorted in form, yet synchronized with the transmitted signal in a manner too precise to dismiss. It was not a linguistic reply, nor a simple echo, but a deliberate return transmission with enough variation to indicate active processing rather than passive reflection. What unsettled the SETI researchers most was not the content, but the timing. The return signal was registered exactly 72 hours after the original transmission, accurate to the second. This precision implied that the message had been received, the delay calculated, and the response generated intentionally. After the return transmission was detected, multiple observatories began reporting technical irregularities. Webb's infrared detectors produced unstable thermal maps for the first time since its deployment. Hubble's gyroscopes recorded minor fluctuations despite steady orientation. At ground-based facilities, operators noted what initially appeared to be software faults, misaligned stellar coordinates, unexplained pixel artifacts, and frozen data streams, occurring specifically when instruments were directed at 3 Atlas. These malfunctions were not distributed randomly. They appeared in synchronized intervals, consistent with a coordinated effect. This led to an assessment within a classified division of the European Space Agency, which proposed that the object might not simply be transmitting signals, but actively interfering, selectively disrupting observation attempts. The consequences of these observations were profound. Natural objects do not restrict the data they generate, but reconnaissance systems might. If 3 Atlas was controlling the visibility of its emissions, then the measurements collected were not the result of unrestricted monitoring. They were data selectively permitted. Soon after, communication from major institutions diminished. Within days of the signal detection and subsequent anomalies, Webb's updates became delayed, filtered, and then rerouted entirely. Publicly available logs were withdrawn. The European Space Agency issued only a brief statement attributing events to instrument calibration, while NASA ceased to provide comments. Even academic journals that had followed the case closely began retracting prior reports or replacing them with neutral summaries stripped of substantive detail. Disagreement spread rapidly across the astrophysics community. Some maintained that agencies were simply verifying the evidence before releasing it, while others argued the opposite, that confirmation already existed and was being deliberately concealed. A handful of independent observatories tried to make raw observations public, but these were soon buried beneath waves of speculation and misinformation. What began as a scientific enigma had been transformed into a controlled strategic resource. History shows clearly what follows when findings are classified. Openness vanishes, and truth is silenced. In response, a coalition of astronomers and mathematicians shifted focus. Rather than searching for direct communication, they applied statistical models and pattern recognition techniques to test whether the signals carried deliberate structure. Their analysis revealed the most disturbing pattern yet. Trajectory analysis indicated that although 3 Atlas appeared to move along a natural course, its path traced a Fibonacci spiral when mapped against planetary positions, a geometric pattern observed throughout biological and physical systems on Earth, and notably present in certain human communication algorithms. In addition, the timing of its orbital adjustments, luminous flares, and even the return ping displayed alignment with prime number sequences. The statistical likelihood of such correlations arising from random dynamics was vanishingly small, supporting the conclusion that these signals were intentional. The implication was clear. 3 Atlas was not merely traversing the solar system, but navigating with strict mathematical order, as if adhering to a predefined route or operational schedule. This led some researchers to advance a provocative hypothesis, that the object might not be a conventional probe at all, but a structured message expressed through its behavior. In effect, humanity may have interpreted the first element of that message. As initial uncertainty gave way to broader analysis, a central conclusion became unavoidable. 3 Atlas could not be classified as a simple fragment of interstellar rock. The artificial light signatures, the structured return transmission, the anomalous materials, and the deliberate orbital adjustment all converged toward one outcome: evidence that suggests humanity has not been alone for an extended period and that such knowledge may never have been intended for us to discover. The James Webb Space Telescope, originally engineered to study the earliest galaxies, may instead have recorded an artifact designed for observation in return, an entity both ancient and purposeful, positioned not in a remote stellar system, but at the very boundary of our own. Yet the response from official institutions has been silence. Data remains inaccessible, agencies issue no statements, and the prevailing judgment appears to be that the public is not prepared to confront the implications. We have recorded the emission, we have traced the altered trajectory, and now the most pressing question arises: what follows? Was 3 Atlas a transient visitor, conducting a survey of our planet before resuming its passage, or was it the precursor of a larger sequence, a probe deployed to precede something more significant, awaiting the appropriate signal to advance? Ultimately, the distinction between machine and alternative form may prove irrelevant. The critical point is that the object arrived, demonstrated awareness, and issued a response. At present, within the expanse of interstellar space, another presence may already be directing its attention toward Earth, the source that initiated contact. The process may already be underway, and once more the cosmos delivers a humbling reminder: humanity does not occupy the center. It is the subject of observation.